The forgotten World War II trick that outsmarted winter itself. When winter turned Europe into a frozen graveyard, when rifles froze solid and men's boots cracked like glass, survival wasn't about who had the biggest army. It was about who could keep warm long enough to fight another day. And in those desperate months of World War II, when the cold killed as mercilessly as the enemy, one forgotten material quietly outperformed every blanket, coat, and sleeping bag the military could issue. It wasn't wool, it wasn't fur, and it definitely wasn't some secret invention. It was straw. Yes, ordinary straw, and it saved thousands of soldiers from freezing to death. The hidden hero of the frozen front. World War II wasn't just fought in trenches and cities. It was fought against brutal cold. In the Russian front, temperatures plunged below -30 degrees Celsius. In the Ardennes, during the Battle of the Bulge, frostbite claimed as many lives as bullets. Soldiers slept in bombed-out ruins, half-frozen foxholes, and snow-choked fields. Their wool blankets soaked up moisture until they were heavy, stiff, and useless. Sleeping bags, when they existed, froze solid overnight. And that's when soldiers started to notice something strange. The men who took shelter in barns, surrounded by straw, stayed warmer. The ones who stuffed straw into their boots and coats, those guys could still move their fingers the next morning. The difference was dramatic. Straw wasn't glamorous, but it worked. And soon enough it became an unofficial survival tool across entire armies. Why straw beat the cold when blankets failed? Here's where it gets interesting. Straw didn't win because it was warm on its own. It won because of how it trapped warmth. Wool and fabric rely on thickness, but straw relies on structure. Each hollow stalk of straw is a tiny air chamber, creating thousands of little heat traps. And that air, not the material itself, is what keeps you warm. Blankets compress. Get them wet, and they lose their loft. Straw, on the other hand, doesn't flatten easily. Even damp, it holds its shape, keeping those tiny pockets of air intact. Those air pockets slow the loss of body heat, creating a natural barrier against the frozen ground and biting wind. Soldiers quickly learned that a 6-inch layer of straw could turn an icy pit into a tolerable shelter. Sleeping on bare snow meant giving your body heat straight to the earth. But sleeping on straw meant staying insulated, dry, and alive. It wasn't luxury. It was pure physics. Ingenuity, born from desperation. Frontline soldiers became experts at improvisation. When supplies ran out, they used what the land provided. In Europe, that meant one thing: straw. Barns became treasure troves. Units on the move scavenged it from fields, stuffing it anywhere they could. Greatcoats were padded until they looked 2 sizes too big. Boots were lined with straw when socks were soaked or missing. Helmets were even filled to trap a bit of heat around the head. Inside makeshift bunkers, men packed straw between logs and sandbags to cut the wind. Some mixed it with mud to create insulation for their dugouts, the same principle that farmers had used for centuries to keep livestock warm through winter. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. The soldiers who used straw slept, the ones who didn't often froze. And that's the quiet brilliance of it. Straw wasn't part of the plan. It wasn't issued by quartermasters or tested by engineers. It was field-tested by necessity and proven by survival. Fast forward to the modern world. We've got synthetic fibers, down insulation, and space-age gear. Yet the same principles those soldiers discovered in the snow still apply. Insulation isn't about fancy materials. It's about trapping air, staying dry, and understanding how heat escapes. If you ever find yourself outdoors in freezing weather without modern equipment, straw could still save your life. Just build a straw bed about 6 to 8 inches thick to keep your body from losing heat to the ground. Cover yourself with more straw, and you've created a natural cocoon that rivals a sleeping bag. It doesn't cost a dime, and it works as well now as it did 80 years ago. Even for campers or survivalists, straw remains a powerful resource. You can stuff it between clothing layers for emergency insulation, line boots to keep feet dry, or use it in shelters to block wind and retain heat. Farmers have known this forever, but World War II soldiers proved it under the harshest test imaginable. What makes this story so fascinating isn't just the straw, it's the mindset. When everything froze and supplies vanished, soldiers didn't give up. They adapted. They used what nature gave them. They understood that survival was less about fancy gear and more about creativity and knowledge. That's a lesson we can all take to heart. Whether you're into history, preparedness, or just the ingenuity of the human spirit, straw is a reminder that solutions don't always come from technology. Sometimes they come from the simplest things, like a handful of dry stalks in a barn. During World War II, straw wasn't, a military secret or a classified invention. It was the difference between waking up or never waking again. It turned freezing nights into survivable ones and gave soldiers a fighting chance in a war that was as much about endurance as firepower. Why this forgotten trick still deserves attention. We live in an age where people underestimate simple knowledge. Survival isn't just about gadgets and gear, it's about understanding principles. Straw, as crude as it looks, embodies that perfectly. It's renewable, natural, and effective. Even today, survival experts test it and find that it performs shockingly well against the cold. When you lie down on a layer of straw, you can feel it. There's an immediate difference. The cold no longer seeps up from the ground. You're surrounded by this quiet warmth, the same warmth that kept soldiers alive on the Eastern Front, in the Ardennes, and, across frozen Europe. This isn't just nostalgia. It's honestly a timeless reminder. In survival, simplicity often wins. The real power of forgotten knowledge, is something we shouldn't underestimate. So next time you hear stories about high-tech winter gear or fancy survival kits, just remember the humble straw. It didn't come from a factory or a military lab. It came from the earth, and it saved lives when nothing else could. Soldiers from World War II didn't need to understand thermodynamics. They just needed to know what worked. And straw worked. It's more than just a historical footnote. It's proof that the greatest survival tools are sometimes the ones we overlook. Straw represents the resilience, adaptability, and ingenuity that defined the generation that fought the cold, the hunger, and the chaos of war. And, in the end, won.